The Berlin Turnpike pretends it's a river at night. Slow cars drifting between islands of light, billboards throwing their own weather, motel signs blinking like tired eyelids. It was late enough that the Dunkin' drive-thru wore a crown of frost and the cashier had her jacket on under the apron. I'd missed the last CT Fast Track bus by 5 minutes, and the cold had set its hands in my pockets like it was owed money. He found me on the far edge of the lot where the plowed snow made walls around the parking spaces. The van looked like work, white, the paint chalky, a magnetic sign on the door that said affordable yard care in a font like a lawn sale. The passenger window hummed down halfway. The heat rolling out had that particular van smell. Coffee, rubber mats, air freshener shaped like a tree pretending to be a forest. He wore a cap with a cracked brim and a jacket with sawdust living in the seams. Beard clipped short, eyes the color of old ice. "You headed south?" he asked, as if route were a personality test and not a direction. "To New Britain," I said, shifting my backpack higher to make it look heavier, more solid, like I was attached to the earth by straps. "That's on my way," he said. The smile he gave me was small and neighborly, the kind of smile good men use when they don't want to scare a woman. He kept his hands on the wheel, palms open. He let the word ma'am soften in the middle when he used it, like he was folding it, not throwing it. Cold night. Bus'll make you wait for it. The bus already had. My phone was dead, just enough battery left to be a mirror and show me the shape of my worry. The van had a dent on the sliding door like a knee had once learned that corner the hard way. The magnetic sign had a little rust blooming around its edge where it pulled paint. It was an honest, shabby van, the kind that parks in front of 3 family houses in March with a rake hanging out the back. "I can drop you right at Maine," he said. "Quicker than that bus ever does." He didn't look directly at me. He looked a degree to the side, as if to give me room to see him without being seen back. If I tell you my instincts screamed, I'm lying. They talked in a normal voice and used words like reasonable and practical. The wind made up my mind for me. I opened the door and climbed in. Inside was warm enough that my eyes stung. The cup holders held 2 cups with Duncan wearing lip stains of coffee. A little milk crate sat between the seats with bungee cords, a roll of duct tape, a box cutter sealed in plastic, and a small blue cooler with a cracked handle. A plastic rosary with 3 missing beads hung from the mirror and tapped once against the glass when I closed the door. He reached across to move the crate to the floor so I could set my feet. His sleeve brushed my knee. The fabric was stiff with old work. He didn't smell like cigarettes. He smelled like winter coat and cheap soap, and a sweetness I couldn't place that made the back of my mouth think of metal. "I'm Bill," he said, picking the friendliest name a mouth can make. He took a left out of the lot like a man who had put a claim on the night and no one had argued. "Aaron?" I said, which wasn't true, but was the name I use when I want the world to be a little easier to carry. He didn't turn the radio on. The van had the kind of stereo that remembers exactly one station and never tells you which. Instead, there was the rattle of tools somewhere in back, and the slap of old wipers that talked to themselves at the bottom of each arc. He drove 5 miles under the limit like patience was his sport. The heater wheezed out a breath that fogged the lower corners of the windshield. "You from around here?" he asked, the question affable and not nosy. "Grew up in Plainville," I said. "Now I wrap subs for people who look past me to ask for extra pickles." He chuckled in a way that sounded like he'd been human next to people before. "I cut lawns," he said, "in the season. Winters I do whatever needs a pair of hands." The magnet sign told me that already. The cooler told me he worked in a way that didn't let him sit for lunch. The duct tape told me nothing because duct tape is an everything tool, and that is the mercy and the trouble of it. We slid past the big box stores that hang onto the turnpike like barnacles. A car wash steamed. A motel flickered. He checked his mirrors on a schedule that felt rehearsed. "They gonna miss you at home?" He asked it lightly, like we'd arrived at some agreed-upon chapter in the small talk book. "My roommate's on 3rd shift," I said, a lie that tried to be a plan. "She'll be up when I get in." He nodded like a man who approved of routines in women. "Good. Safe that way." He offered me the coffee he wasn't drinking. "Still warm," he said. His tone was the opposite of insistent. It was casual enough to make refusal sound rude. "I'm good," I said, and he let the cup be the only thing in the van that didn't have a place. We didn't pass the exit we should have passed. Or we did. Only the sign was an angle and the snow had collected in the letters and the arrow meant more than one thing if you squinted. He took the ramp that was not my ramp. The night did its blank, forgiving thing. It let roads pretend to be other roads as long as the man behind the wheel wanted that. "You're going the long way," I said, keeping my voice friendly. "Maine would have been faster." He did not correct me. He made a small made-you-a-promise sound in his throat and patted the wheel once like it was an animal. "There's a light out on the other route," he said. "You sit at it till you forget your name." "I like my name," I said. "I can learn it," he said conversationally, as if learning were a hobby and not a tactic. We drifted under the highway where the salt crusts the concrete in winter like frost inside an old freezer. The van's tires hummed like they had a secret life. In the side mirror, the Dunham sports sign blinked. The color went white, blue, white, like someone breathing too shallow. We were pointed away from where I lived and toward where things go to hide behind delivery bays and dumpsters in the hours when the stores dream. "Turn here," I said too quickly. I pointed at a street I didn't know because I needed to change the map that was drawing itself inside him. He said, which is the smallest possible way to tell someone no and still sound like a neighbor. He had a way of holding the wheel, hands at 10 and 2, thumbs hovering, never pushing down, as if pressure were an argument he preferred to win in subtler ways. He used his blinker on empty roads. He tapped it twice when no one was there, like a habit that had become a superstition. If I had not been afraid, I would have called it considerate. The heater hiccuped and then breathed deeper. Warm air stroked my shins through jeans that had been snow-stiff 20 minutes before. The plastic rosary tapped the glass again and again in a rhythm that made me want to put my finger on it to make it stop. He noticed my eyes on it. "My mother's," he said. "People like to see it." "Does it help you?" I asked, because I like to watch men decide which part of that is the answer. "It helps them," he said. "That's all it needs to do." We were in the part of New Britain that concertinas into warehouses and storage units and odd little gravel gaps where plows dumped the snow from bigger, more official places. The moon made the chain-link fences look like graph paper. A solitary light over the back door of a defunct buffet turned the snow into old soup. The van slowed without asking. He took a right where there wasn't a street sign, as if night had read him directions. "Hey!" I said, the word bigger than it should have been in that cabin. "My place is right up ahead," he finished, softly, kindly, like he'd been helping me remember all along. He didn't look at me when he reached with his left hand and clicked the passenger door lock down. He did it the way a man smooths a tablecloth wrinkle. Thoughtless, fussy, practiced. My stomach made the quietest animal noise it knows. He heard it anyway. He smiled at the windshield like we were sharing a joke in a movie. "Cold tonight," he said. "Don't want the door to pop." "Doors don't pop in vans," I said, because pedantry is a last defense when you have none. He let that ride. We crept along a lane that was 2 ruts of asphalt pretending to be respectable under a quilt of plow throw. He eased the van around a pile of pallets and a dead forklift, then slipped us behind a strip mall that had a barber, a tattoo place, and a shuttered payday loan store, keeping each other company like 3 bad decisions in a row. He killed the headlights. The world didn't get darker. It got honest. "Why me?" I asked. I've learned there's a moment you can ask a man that, and he will answer. Ask too late, and the words are only for you. He touched the brim of his cap like the hat needed telling, too. "Because you were cold and you said yes," he said. He said it like the weather and I were collaborators. "I didn't say yes to this," I said, and it came out small, but it came out. He rolled the window down an inch. The air licked my face like an insult. He took a breath and seemed to approve of its ingredients. The rosary tapped. The heater wheezed. The duct tape in the crate made a small shifting noise, or maybe that was only my bones. "It's better if you're good," he said, and he didn't say good like a threat. He said it like a man reading a manual out loud to a friend who can't see over the engine. "What does that mean?" I asked. The question steadied itself by growing steps. What first, then does, then that. No extra steps, he said. We do what we have to, and then we're finished. The way he said, we made my scalp prickle. It was a we, like a teacher uses when everyone has to take the test and the teacher already knows the answers. He reached into the milk crate and took out the roll of tape. He didn't lift it like a weapon. He held it like a man holds a tool he has used often enough to have nicknames for. He set it gently on the dashboard. The adhesive edge looked harmless, like any strip of sticky gray that holds the world together when it wants to come apart. In the footwell, the blue cooler knocked against my shoe. He noticed and repositioned it with a neat little push of his work boot. The motion revealed the handle of a nylon strap beneath. Neat, white, a loop that remembered wrists it hadn't met yet. I lifted my feet. He liked that I saved him the trouble of asking. He likes tidy, I noted, and swallowed the part of me that is also tidy. He kept his hands visible. He reminded me to breathe like a nurse would. He told me my hands would be in my lap. He told me he would tell me what to do and I would do it, and then we would drive, and that would be that. He looked at me on drive. He left that alone, like a blank. The test assumes you know how to fill. You can drop me right at the police station, I said. Humor, attempted. Nice warm lobby. There's always a clever one, he said, almost fond. I like clever. It makes it feel like work. He took his cap off, finally. His hair was cropped short like a man who cuts it himself to deny the world any say in his shape. His forehead was a map of winter. He put the cap on the dash where the tape had been, moved the tape to his knee, and patted it once like a pet. He looked at my hands. Gimme, he said. No, I said. Not loud, not brave, just the order my brain sent to my mouth, and my mouth obeyed this time. He nodded like I'd kept a schedule he'd predicted. He offered an alternative. Do you want to sit in the back? Less draft? Do you have a blanket? I asked, and hated myself for making this easier for him. He smiled at the windshield again. I do, he said. Good girl. I'm not a girl, I said, which was a strange hill to choose in a valley of bad options, but my body needed me to be an adult, and I wanted him to hear it. You're cold, he said gently, which was not what we were talking about, and he knew it. He slid out of the van without using the interior handle. He did that mechanic's reach to pop the door from outside, not inside. The wind came in like a dog that hasn't learned boundaries. He walked around the front, slow, deliberate, showing me his hands. He opened the sliding door. It stuck half an inch, like doors do in salt weather. He knew exactly how much to lean to unstick it. Inside was darkness that remembered the shape of sheetrock and rakes, the flat smell of carpet that has traveled in the company of too many mistakes. Back, he said. I'll scream, I said. It came out a plan without conviction. People don't come for screaming back here, he said, not unkind. They're trying to keep and not to lose. He waited. He liked to let a person arrive at their own compliance. It makes them quieter. I stayed very still. I looked at the rosary. I looked at the tape. I looked at the cooler. I looked at his hand on the door rail. Dry knuckles, scab-healed and flaked on the index finger, a triangle of pale skin where a ring would be if there were one. He'd taken it off, I thought, or never wore it except when the world could see. What's your favorite month? He asked suddenly, as if we'd been playing questions the whole time. What? I said. Your favorite month, he repeated. Mine's April. The ground goes from iron to bread. August, I said, because he wanted information and I wanted to deface it by lying. Everything's loud. August is messy, he said. You like messy? I like loud, I said, so I can tell where I am. He thought that over like a teacher does when a kid says something he can't grade. Then he stepped back half a pace and motioned, a courtly thing, not a shove. The motion was practiced. I could imagine him opening van doors for pallets, donors, couches, women, boxes that didn't cry. I sat very still and watched him be polite. He could do this for hours. He had that kind of patience. Patience is a tool, too. Let's play a game, I said, and surprised both of us. You tell me 10 things about yourself. I tell you 10 about me. Then we make a deal. What's the deal? He asked, curious like a cat at a cracked bathroom door. You let me keep my hands free, I said. So I don't get frostbite and you don't get a corpse in your nice, neat van. He gave the rosary a look that wasn't prayer and wasn't blasphemy. It was accounting. He added frostbite to the list of things that could make more steps. He hates more steps. 5 things, he said. Each. 10, I said, and I don't know why I tried. Maybe because 10 is tidy. We settled on 7, as if compromise had anything to do with fairness. He went first. He liked spring. He had a sister somewhere near Waterbury who never called. He once drove to Maine just to see how long his van would go without the needle lying. He kept receipts in a shoebox. He never drank at work. He broke his wrist in '97 on ice, and the bone sets weather in it like a barometer. He doesn't like music in the car. It makes his head noisy. I told him I didn't have a sister, which was a lie. I told him I could change a tire faster than any boy I knew in high school, which was the truest thing about me that night. I told him I liked August. I told him I would be missed. I told him I had a scar on my thigh in the shape of Florida from a dog bite when I was 12. I told him I had an uncle who taught me how to escape zip ties with the metal edge of a laminated card. Lie, 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 but I said it the way truth sits on a tongue. I told him I believed in angels. He looked at the rosary again and did not smile. I'd bought myself maybe 2 minutes. 2 minutes is everything if you know how to spend it well. I leaned forward and turned the heater up with 2 numb fingers. He didn't stop me. Warmth made fog on my glasses. I took them off and let the night blur into shapes. The tape sat on his knee like a gray mouth. Back, he said again, but softer, like we were collaborating now, like I was a responsible coworker and he was trying not to be bossy. I slid 1 foot to the floor and felt the loop of the nylon strap find my ankle like a snake that had been trained to greet. He watched the motion of my knee, not my face. He was already seeing me in steps, not in total. The van interior was an inventory. The cold was a schedule. The tape was a promise. Bill, I said. He liked his name in my mouth. He tilted his head like a dog who recognizes the sound of the treat jar. You could let me walk, I said. I don't know your plate number, and I'm not good with directions. I'd get lost, and all you'd have for your trouble is a cold night and a wasting roll of tape. He thinks about waste, I realized. He minds it. Waste is part of the job, he said. You throw out the ends, you keep the middle. That's how it's done. He put his hand out. The palm had a callus that made a pale badge below his index finger, where a tool rested in every day. He was careful with his fingerprints. He was careful with everything. He was built for long games. He had made a sport of making short ones longer. Hands, he said, even kinder than before, because kindness always sounds like a way out until you learn it's a way in. I gave him 1 hand. It was shaking, and it was mine, and I hated it for betraying the part of me that was made of ship steel. He wrapped the tape around my wrist once, twice, a neat overlap, the kind that tears clean when you want it to. He didn't yank. He pressed. He smoothed. The adhesive recognized skin and decided to stay. He left the other hand free, a compromise that felt like a commission. Behave and see how well this can go. Back, he said. Let's keep it warm. I scooted toward the sliding door as if it would open into a classroom and not into his plan. The metal lip bit my hip. He took the loop and lifted it to show me the trick of sitting, turning, letting your own weight assist him without him needing to pull. He could have taught this. He almost did. My free hand in my lap found the small metal rectangle of my bus card in my coat pocket. A little stiff, a little sharp. Uncle never taught me any zip tie trick. The internet did, years ago, late at night, the way the internet teaches women things other people think they shouldn't need to know. The card wasn't much, but it had an edge. I moved like a squirrel, thinking about looking like a branch. Little, little, little. He watched my face, not my lap. He'll always watch faces. He had learned everything he needed in faces and taped the rest. He likes hearing the words before he makes them stop. He likes the little lies. He likes the prettiness of the first 5 minutes. You scared? He asked. He asked as if you could be wrong about the answer and he would correct you gently. Yes, I said. My mouth made the sound right away. I didn't have to go find it, which scared me more. Good, he said, and the word landed soft between my boots like a dropped mitten. That means you'll listen. The strap kissed my ankles and considered them. The tape touched my other wrist and chattered for the first tooth of a tear. The cooler knocked the door as the van settled into park. Somewhere nearby, a plow belched. Somewhere far, a siren considered and changed its mind. The night shifted its weight. He leaned in to press the tape down and breathed on my knuckles by accident, and for a second, I didn't plan it. I flinched the way you flinch from heat when you know a burner is off, even though your mother taught you to hover your hand above it. The tape wrinkled. He smoothed it. I moved the card a hair. The adhesive sighed. "If you listen," he said, "this doesn't have to be messy," I said with him, and he laughed a little, because he loves when people recite his lines. "It feels like respect." "I'm going to cover your mouth," he continued, "the way you explain to a child that you will wipe their face, not because they are bad, but because jam exists. You can breathe through your nose. I checked the vent. It's not blocked. I'll leave your coat on. I'm not cruel." "I don't believe you," I said. It came out so calm I impressed the version of me that lives in mirrors. "You will," he said. "People do." He reached for the tape again, and I lifted my face. Not in acceptance, in aim. My teeth met the edge of that stick gray with a soft animal tug. It tasted like the inside of cheap balloons. He paused, registering the wrong thing. The tape clung to my lip. I shook my head like a dog who's decided water is not part of the plan. The strip tore. He didn't expect it to. A ragged piece ripped sideways, ruinously. He frowned. Just a little. The night noticed. So did I. "Don't be clever," he said, almost tender. "I'm always clever," I said, and my voice shook, and I reached up with my free hand and slapped the heater dial to max. Hot air roared into the cabin, drowning our tone. The rosary swung wide and smacked the mirror. He blinked. The tape in his hand fluttered with the blast and stuck to itself in a small, ugly kiss. He lifted his head to see which way the slider for the vent had gone. And in that blink, the bus card's corner found the first thread of the tape around my wrist and began the patient work of learning to be a knife. Outside, a snowplow turned the corner, its blade throwing a slow wave that shushed against the curb like a mother comforting a child. The driver never looked our way. The world will always prefer its own chores. Inside, the heater howled. The van became a hairdryer for a corpse. He turned the dial down with one careful finger like he resented being made to fix something, like the sound had made a scratch on his neat. I kept the card moving. Tiny, tiny, tiny. "You'll be fine," he said, and for the first time his voice had to be persuaded to believe itself. "This is just cold and bad luck, and you said yes." "You said you weren't cruel," I said. "Prove it." He considered the evidence. My mouth, my hands, the tremor of my shoulders, the snow making its quiet arguments against the body heat of the van. He nodded to himself. He likes displays of decency. They look good on him. He took the tape off my mouth before it was on. "There," he said. "See?" I saw. I saw how much he needed to see himself in that light. The card whispered through one more layer like a letter opener finding the end of an envelope. The adhesive pulled away from my skin with a small, mean noise. Heat fogged my glasses. The world was a blessed blur. He leaned to check the strap at my ankles. My wrist breathed once. Free, not free almost. He looked up and caught my face learning something. He smiled into it. "You can kick," he said, "if you think that helps. You can bite. You can tell me your real name. None of that changes what's next." "Then what does?" I asked. "Listening," he said again, softer, as if this time he was asking me to be kind to both of us. The heater went back to its slow, consenting breath. The rosary tapped. The tape waited. The card cut. We hung in the little space between a plan and the way the night sometimes ruins it out of love for mess. He slid the door wider. Cold air folded over the carpet like a sheet over a body. He pointed at the back, at the rectangle of cleared space where other things had once been made to lie still and consider their future. I set my feet where he wanted, on the edge of the rubber mat where salt had dried in white constellations, and I bent forward as if I were accepting a blessing, while the bus card kissed glue and my skin became mine by degrees. "Lie down," he said, and when a man says it like that, he's telling you the floor has already been assigned your name. "Blanket," I bargained, because bargaining is buying time on layaway. He obliged, neat gray wool, folded like a flag, laid out as if he respected the prop more than the person. He let me arrange the corner under my shoulder. He let me tuck my chin. He liked compliance that contained apparent dignity. It polished his self-story. He reached for the tape again. He was close enough that I could see where a hair grew out of a scar and made a decision about direction. He smelled like heat and pennies. He gave me a sentence he thought would help me float. "It will be over fast." "Prove it," I said again, and now he frowned, real this time, because repetition is a waste to men who keep counts. He smoothed the first wrap of tape around my wrists. 1, 2, 3. And in the third loop, the bus card touched a seam that had been tormented exactly enough to fail. The tape snagged itself. He adjusted with the patience of a man who never, ever tears a piece crooked. He leaned in to press the edge flat. My free hand, miracle finally came up quick as spit and tapped the hazard lights button on the dash with the edge of my knuckle. The van began to blink red into the bad dark. It was stupid. It was tiny. It was a light inside a box behind a strip mall that no one had to see. But it was not nothing, and not nothing is where miracles live. He went very still. He hates blinking. He hates attention. He hates noise that says this is not contained. He reached to hit the switch, and I said no. Not because it would stop him. Because I had to say it and hear myself say it, the way you have to hear your own name when you've almost lost it. He hit the switch. The red light stopped. The night looked away again, uninterested. The heater sighed. He breathed in that long, parental way, like patience is a chorus you sing to yourself when the children misbehave. The tape in his hand waited to be useful. "Enough," he said, and the word made a solid edge in the air we were sharing. My ankle strap tightened. My wrists burned with adhesive and then cooled because skin forgives when it wants to keep you. He took the tape between his teeth, tore it perfectly, pressed it flat with the pad of his thumb, and for the first time in the whole night he looked like he was working. "Bill," I said, because his name in my mouth was the only tool I had that wasn't a card and a lie. "You said you weren't cruel." "I said I'm not," he said, and he believed it. "That is the cruelty." A truck grumbled in the next lot. Tires scritched. A door slammed the way doors do when a man is done with a shift and beginning his night. The blinkers weren't blinking anymore, but they had made a rhythm in my head, and that rhythm turned into counting, and counting turned into seconds, and seconds turned into a plan. Sometimes the only way out is through, but slowly. "Tell me where we're going," I said, because men like this are proud of their maps. "A quiet spot," he said. "I keep it tidy." "Behind the strip mall?" I asked, and he didn't answer, which was an answer. "Tell me a story," I said, buying time with narrative, the way you give a toddler a grape for every shoe they agree to put on. He obliged because he loves to speak while he works. It smooths the edges. "I used to go with my father to dump grass clippings," he said, conversational, the tape making a low purr. "He'd tell me the names of trees, birch, maple, elm, said you can know a place by the way it grows." "What grows here?" I asked. "Plastic bags," he said, the joke landing lonely between us. "And men who forget what they owe." "You owe me my name," I said. "It's not yours," he said. "Not here." The tape finished its small, wicked circuit. He tested the bonds like a patient man testing a knot he is proud of but would never brag about. He nodded to himself. He loves when systems work. He adjusted my coat so it covered my wrists, which would be kindness if it weren't logistics. He pulled the gray blanket up to my chin. He tucked it like a good father. He patted the corner. He stood. "Breathe," he said again, forever, as if oxygen were something he could loan me. The van started. The engine's rumble filled the little room he had made in the back. We moved. The carpet whispered under my cheek. The rosary tapped to a new rhythm. My hands found each other inside the blanket like animals finding each other in a hole. The bus card's corner made one last sullen bite, and the tape gave a fraction with a sound almost too small to count. Almost. We turned. We stopped. He braked gently, like the van had glass hearts in it, and he was showing off. Outside, nothing made itself known. No voices, no clatter of carts, no slush groan under plow. We had arrived at a place that had practiced being empty all day, so it could be a professional at it at night. He cut the engine. He listened. I listened. He liked what he didn't hear. He slid the door. The cold bit. He climbed in and took my shoulder in fingers that had excellent manners and turned me to face the wall of the van, like he was sparing me the sight of the night. He made a small sound of regret for the bluntness of the metal against my collarbone. He made himself sound tender because he prefers that shape in his own mouth. "Almost done," he promised, and I thought about how to make that sentence true on different terms. I kicked, but not where he was ready. I kicked the cooler. It blew open with the slap of a cheap hinge. A little bottle rolled, a clear thing with a pharmacy label skinned off and adhesive ghosts where letters had been. It hit the lip of the door and fell into the snow with a sound like a coin deciding not to be yours. He saw it. For the first time, the neatness on his face cracked. "Stay," he said to me, uselessly, and reached for the bottle in the snow like he was saving the van from a stain. I rolled. Not out. He was between me and the door, toward the front, a stupid animal scramble, blanket over my face, wrists aching, ankle strap biting like a scold. He caught my coat by the hood, and the world narrowed to a sewing needle eye through which my breath had to thread. The rosary swung. The tape glared. The bus card murmured, "Keep going," in a voice I wish belonged to someone living. He set me back where he wanted me without swearing. It is unnerving to be rearranged by a man who does not get angry. Anger is a thing you can negotiate with, or light a match at. Calm is a wall you can die against. When the bottle was back in the cooler, he closed it with unnecessary care. He smoothed a hand down his jacket like he was pressing a shirt on a hanger. He exhaled. He looked at me. Something passed over his face. A small weather front that only changed the air 10 inches in front of his mouth. Regret? No. Calculation. "Don't make it worse," he said. A gentle sentence. A promise anyway. The tape on my wrist said almost. The strap on my ankle said not yet. The bus card in my palm said again. I said, I don't know why I said it. "You are going to be so tired when this is done. You are going to have to drive somewhere and undress the night off of you and wash and wash and wash." He stared at me like I'd said his middle name. He didn't like people imagining him after. He liked to keep the world in before. He leaned in without meaning to. His breath haloed. The rosary tapped his cap brim. "A quick one," he said, more to himself than to me, and showed me the tape again like a ring. "I don't," I said, and he pressed the tape across my mouth with exquisite care. The tape tasted like old balloons in winter. He checked the seals with the pad of his thumb, the way a good mechanic checks a hose. Gentle, certain. He listened to my nose breathe and decided it would do. He said, "Good," and the word landed with the weight of a man stamping a form. He turned my shoulders, and I let him, because sometimes lead is a weapon. I curled my bound wrists under me so the card's edge could keep sawing at the quiet place where tape hates curves. I made small, obedient sounds against the adhesive. So he could hear the animal he expects. He doesn't like words yet. He'll like them later. He wants the room to sound like work at this step. He moved my ankles into a loop I could have gotten out of if I weighed an ounce less, or if the strap had learned kindness. He tightened. He checked. He had a checklist. I could hear the boxes tick. He slid the door half closed, enough to keep the worst of the wind out, not enough to make the van look like a van from the street. He thought of that. He thinks of everything that makes a problem later. He stores problems in the snow behind things and calls it tidying. He stood in the open slice and put his head up like a deer. He listened. He measured. He assessed. I counted with him, because my body needed a job, and counting was a job that respected both of us. 1, his breath making a thread of steam. 2, the night making no case for anyone but us. 3, the tape whispering as my pulse learned a new song. 4, the sound of something going wrong in his van in a new way. It wasn't loud. It was a click, a blink, a little electrical ahem from the dash. The hazard light I'd smacked before remembered itself. 1 red pulse, then another. He turned fast in small space, bumping his shoulder on the door. Precision went crooked for a sliver of a second. He darted for the front to slap the switch, and in that sliver I planted both bound feet against the metal lip and threw my body the way a swimmer throws herself when she knows the lake is colder than hell, and it's still better than the boat. I fell into the snow. The cold was a living thing with a grudge. It bit the wet through my jeans with a speed that felt personal. The tape tore my lip where it had adhered too well. A line of taste like pennies ran into my mouth. The strap on my ankles gave an inch, a centimeter, a promise. Behind me, his hands grabbed for my coat and found blanket. The blanket invented a new job for itself. Decoy. I scrabbled like a badger. I made a sound that was all vowel and winter. The chain-link fence at the lot's edge was 10 feet and 1 eternity away. "Stop," he said, and there was real urgency now. Not much, but enough to make the knight take notes. "You'll get hurt." "I know," I said into the tape, and it came out I know anyway. The hazard lights kept time like a work song. He lunged. He didn't tackle. He hooked 2 fingers into the back belt loop of my jeans and arrested me like a paper caught under a light breeze. I rolled onto my back and put both boots onto his wrist and pushed like I have never pushed anything in my life. Something in his forearm popped under my heels. Not a break, something smaller and meaner. A tendon complaining. He hissed. He didn't swear. He didn't hit me. "Now look," he said, like a teacher who forgives late homework and wants you to feel worse for it. "Now look what you—" The sentence never had an end, because a security truck ghosted at the far end of the lot, 2 white headlights floored by boredom and the promise of coffee, and the hazard light's red wink told the driver a story his training recognized. Something is trying to be seen. He slowed. He rolled. He looked. He saw a white van that didn't belong to the storefronts that were closed. He saw a woman on the ground with her mouth wintered over. He saw a man in a cap with his hand in the wrong place on a stranger's coat. He saw the blinking. He saw his own shift go from quiet to paperwork in 1 blink. He pulled up in that cautious way that says, "I know people. I know people." He cracked his window. He put a clipboard in his lap to make him feel like the right shape of human. He said, "Evening," like both of us were citizens. "You all right, miss?" he asked me, and Mercy entered the picture like a dog who always lived here and had just been in the backyard for a minute. My driver spoke quickly, politely, authoritatively. "She slipped," he said, "helped her back into the van for warmth. Mouth covered the wind, you know how." The security guard had heard too many first sentences to believe any of them. He parked and got out. He was 40 with a gut he trusted. His jacket said J. Cardenas over Eagle Eye Security. He kept his hands open and his eyes on mine like we had agreed to something days ago and were just now catching up. "You look like you could use a hand," he said. He meant, "Say the thing, and I will make my body into paperwork to support it." My driver moved his injured wrist in a way that would be convincing to a mother. "Sir," he said, modest, friendly, reasonable. "She's embarrassed." I shook my head hard enough to make stars. I tried to say help. The tape made it a hungry animal's sound, but it was English enough. Cardenas saw the gray at my mouth and didn't like it. He reached for his radio. He didn't look away. "We're going to keep it warm and neat." My driver tried again, and I started to hate those words so much I could live 100 years on the fuel of it. Cardenas said, into the radio, into the night, into God, "Need another unit at the rear of," and named the empty stores that had been empty for too long, and my driver let go of my belt loop like he was tired of his own story. He stepped back. He lifted both hands. He smiled that small neighbor's smile that had gotten me into the van, and that was the last time I saw that version of his face. He didn't run. Men like him don't, not at that step. Running is messy. He stood where he was and he looked at the hazard light, irritated like a man whose smoke alarm chirps once an hour and who would rather buy a new house than change the battery. And he said the sentence he had never planned to have to say. "Okay." Cardenas kept me in his headlight wash while he called it all the way in. He said the words that make nights change shape. Female bound, unknown male, white van, back of plaza. He did not prod. He did not try to be a hero. He put himself between a man and a woman, and the wind came around his body and his jacket made a little tent of warm for my head. The tape tasted like pennies and the bus card whispered again, and I worked it like prayer. By the time the cruiser slid in with a sound I will love for the rest of my life, the tape fell away from my wrist like a scab that had decided to let go. I pulled it clumsy fast, ripped the mouthpiece off like a bandage and said no, and help and please, and I know him as Bill, and he has a cooler, and there's a strap, and don't let him close the door. A litany that made me feel human again, because it had verbs. Deputies did what deputies do. They became procedure, and procedure became a wall, and a man in a cap learned what enough means when other people get to define it. I learned how to stand up in a winter lot with my ankles still arguing with a strap. I learned that my legs remembered me. I learned that a blinking light in the wrong place can become a flare if you don't give up on it before the right pair of eyes arrives. They put me in the warm back of a car, and the window fogged, and my name crawled back into my mouth like a pet who forgives you, because that is what pets do. A deputy asked me if I was hurt. I said, "Not yet." And that was when I started shaking like the fear had just landed after circling overhead for an hour watching weather. They read him things. He listened the way men like him listen at this step. Politely, with that inward cast that means he is making adjustments to a schedule he had not intended to change. He looked at me once. Not long. Just long enough to count me. A number that wouldn't make his favorite list. A number that would make other people's lists for a long time. How am I doing now? Well, I don't take rides, I still carry a bus card, and I hit hazard lights a lot, just to make sure I remember how. Killer reveal. William Devin Howell, the Sick Ripper, Westfarms Mall killer. William Devin Howell, born 1970, murdered 7 people in 2003 in central Connecticut, often using a battered work van to pick up vulnerable victims around the Berlin Turnpike / New Britain area. He hid bodies in a wooded area behind a strip mall lot later called the Garden of Evil. Arrested in 2005 on an initial manslaughter case, Howell eventually confessed and in 2017 received 360 years in prison after pleading guilty to 6 additional murders. Investigators described a meticulously controlled offender who relied on a workmanlike routine, duct tape, and secluded commercial backlots.